Welcome to Late Night Science. Tonight, you are not alone in your quiet room. You are part of a vast constellation of curious minds, scattered across the globe, listening together beneath the same night sky. Here, in this shared stillness, we embark on a journey into the most intimate frontier, the spark of thought itself. Thank you for joining, whether you are here for the first time or returning as part of this growing circle of wonder. To those who have subscribed and shared in past evenings, I am deeply grateful. You make this community glow brighter. If you feel moved, you are warmly invited to subscribe, to gently like this video, and to share in the comments where in the world you are listening from. Because as we drift together into this calm exploration, each point of light, each person, adds to the constellation. Tonight, we begin at the edge of silence, where something miraculous happens inside your head. A tiny spark, a hidden pulse of energy that carries not just information, but the essence of what we call a thought. It is invisible, almost immeasurable, and yet it is you. A neuron fires, and in that flicker of electricity, we find ourselves caught between the concrete and the mysterious, between measurable voltage and unmeasurable wonder. Inside the quiet cathedral of the skull, billions of neurons wait like stars before dawn, silent but brimming with potential. Each neuron, so small you could not see it without the aid of magnification, holds the ability to light up with a signal, to carry forward an impulse that will travel down a narrow path and leap into another cell. It is, in one sense, simply the movement of charged particles, sodium and potassium ions, slipping through delicate channels in the membrane. This is electricity, as pure and physical as the lightning bolt that splits the sky. Yet in another sense, it is something altogether different, because when these sparks occur in their vast and intricate choreography, they form not thunder, but memory, not flash, but feeling, not mere current, but the delicate sense of self. Science assures us that the spark is only a pulse of energy, measurable in millivolts, predictable by equations, reproducible in laboratories. But as you sit here listening, feeling your own awareness alive and glowing within, can you reduce that to numbers on a screen? There is tension here, between the reduction and the reverence, between what can be measured and what can only be marveled at. This is the spark inside silence, an event that is both ordinary and extraordinary, a moment where biology becomes philosophy without asking permission. Imagine for a moment that you are watching the brain as if it were a night sky stretched across a vast horizon. The neurons are stars, billions upon billions, scattered in clusters and filaments, glowing faintly in the dark. At first there is quiet, no sound, no movement, only stillness. Then, suddenly, a flicker. One star sends a pulse of light. Then, another responds, and soon an entire constellation blazes to life. That is how thought begins. A signal, like a ripple across a pond, spreading outward into networks too vast to comprehend. The physicist might say this is nothing more than electrochemical signaling, as inevitable as water flowing downhill. The philosopher might counter that it is the very birth of awareness, a spark that cannot be contained by explanation. Which is correct? Perhaps both, perhaps neither. This contrast, the certainty of mechanism against the uncertainty of meaning, becomes the rhythm of our inquiry. And you, drifting here with us, hold both truths at once, the comfort of science and the wonder of mystery. You are the witness of silence transforming into spark, of matter transforming into mind. And in this transformation lies the question that refuses to be quiet. What truly is thought? So we linger here, at the edge of silence and fire, asking softly, when a neuron ignites, what is it that is born? Is it only a message passed from cell to cell, no different from electricity humming along a copper wire? Or is it the secret entrance into consciousness, the doorway through which awareness steps into being? Perhaps it is both, a paradox that, resists neat answers. Science gives us precision, the exact timing of the spike, the path of ions, the measured voltage. Philosophy gives us questions, why it matters, how it feels, whether the spark carries not just data, but experience. And so we hold these opposites together. Silence and spark, body and mind, number and meaning. The neuron fires, and from that fire rises a thought, fragile yet infinite, fleeting yet eternal in its mystery. And as you let this image rest in, your mind, this quiet spark glowing against the backdrop of silence, you may find yourself wondering softly, without rush. If thought begins in silence, does silence also live within every thought, waiting to be heard? Inside your head, hidden beneath layers of bone and blood, a storm is always unfolding. It does not roar like thunder across the sky, and yet it is just as powerful, just as real. It is the quiet storm of electricity, a constant pulse flowing through the delicate threads of your nervous system. Tonight, we sink into that storm, slowly, gently, following the path of a single spark as it moves across the flesh. In this hidden world, your brain is not only a place of thought, but a living landscape of currents, waves, and subtle lightning. Scientists call this bioelectricity, but you might imagine it as rivers of light coursing through the darkness of your mind. And as you listen, you may find yourself asking, what does it mean that the very substance of your awareness is not static, but alive with charge, with movement, with fire? The story begins at the surface of a neuron, at its fragile membrane. This thin boundary, no thicker than a whisper, separates the inside of the cell from the outside world. On either side, particles gather, tiny ions carrying positive and negative charges, like invisible grains of sand waiting to shift. Potassium and sodium, calcium and chloride. Each one is drawn by forces as ancient as the universe itself, by attraction and repulsion, by balance and imbalance. At rest, the neuron is quiet, maintaining its fragile difference of charge, holding back like a bow drawn before release. And then, with the opening of a gate, just a protein folding in a particular way, the storm begins. Sodium rushes in, potassium moves out, and in that rapid exchange, a signal is born. What was silence becomes voltage, what was still becomes movement. To the scientist, this is the action potential, a cascade of predictable shifts. But to you, it might feel like a spark racing down a wire, a glimmer of light speeding through a corridor of flesh, the first tremor of thought carried forward. The spark travels, always in one direction, from the slender dendrites that listen to the world, toward the long axon that sends a message onward. Along the axon, tiny insulating layers wrap around like protective bark around a tree. This insulation, called myelin, allows the spark to leap, skipping from one exposed point to the next, in what scientists describe as saltatory conduction. To you, it might resemble a stone skipping across water, touching down lightly, rising, again, faster and faster until it reaches its destination. And yet here is the paradox. While the mechanics are precise, the meaning remains elusive. For in this simple dance of ions lies not only movement, but memory, not only charge, but consciousness. It is as if the universe, in shaping such electrical pathways, also left room for poetry, for mystery, for a truth that slips between the lines of biology. Electricity in wires powers machines, lights, cities. Electricity in flesh powers love, imagination, dreams. How can the same force, described by the same equations, give rise to such different worlds? And so you rest with the question, when you feel joy, when you recall a childhood scene, when you make a decision, is it only the rush of ions that moves unseen within your neurons? Or is there something more, something that science has not yet touched? Some will say the answer lies in complexity, that the storm of billions of neurons together creates thought the way countless drops form a river. Others suggest that thought is not reducible at all, that electricity alone, cannot account for the warmth of memory or the tenderness of longing. Between these views, you float gently, as though carried on a tide. You imagine electricity flowing in your own mind at this very moment, sparks firing as you listen, pulses moving as you picture these images. And you wonder, is awareness the current, or is it the ocean in which the current flows? The flesh carries electricity, yet electricity also carries the flesh, shaping how you move, how you breathe, how you are. And perhaps, as you drift deeper into thought, you feel the beauty of this paradox, this living electricity that hums within you, night and day, quiet but unending, the storm of life itself. Between every neuron in your brain lies a space, a gap so small it seems almost imaginary. And yet, it is within this emptiness that the true magic of thought takes place. Tonight, we cross that hidden distance, that microscopic canyon, and watch how the spark of one cell reaches out toward another. This gap is called the synapse, and though it measures only a fraction of a millimeter, it holds within it the possibility of connection. Without it, signals would halt, thoughts would collapse, and the music of the mind would fall silent. And so we drift into this unseen territory, where one neuron whispers to the next, not with sound, not with light, but with molecules, bridges of the invisible, carrying across what the brain longs to share. Imagine it as standing at the edge of a quiet cliff at dusk, tossing a glowing ember into the air, and watching as another hand, waiting on the far side, catches it and carries the fire onward. The process is as physical as it is mysterious. When an electrical signal races down the length of a neuron and reaches the very end, it cannot leap directly into the next cell. Electricity alone cannot bridge that gap. Instead, the neuron transforms its pulse into chemistry. Tiny sacs, called vesicles, crowd at the edge of the cell, each one filled with neurotransmitters, the brain's secret messengers. With exquisite timing, the sacs fuse with the membrane and release their contents into the space between. These molecules, invisible to the naked eye, drift across the synapse and bind to waiting receptors on the far side. It is a dance of release and reception, of sending and receiving, all happening in a span so brief it barely exists in time. The scientist explains it with clarity. Neurotransmission, chemical binding, receptor activation. But to you, it may feel like something softer, more human. A hand reaching out in darkness, a message carried through silence, a bridge built between islands. In every instant of your life, billions of these bridges form, dissolve, and form, again stitching together the fabric of your mind. And yet, here too, the paradox unfolds. Are these molecules merely switches, flicking on and off the lights of your brain? Or do they carry something more, something like meaning or feeling? Consider serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, names spoken often, linked to mood, to memory, to motion. To science, they are chemicals with measurable effects. To experience, they are joy, curiosity, longing, sorrow. How can a molecule become an emotion? How can drifting particles, colliding in empty space, give rise to the ache of nostalgia, the warmth of love, or the sharp edge of regret? This is the tension we cradle tonight, the undeniable biology of neurotransmitters and the ineffable mystery of the worlds they create inside us. Some argue that complexity alone explains it, that the combined action of countless synapses gives rise to consciousness the way countless drops give rise to an ocean. Others whisper that perhaps consciousness is not generated but revealed through these bridges, that neurons are not creators of thought but conduits of something deeper. And you, listening now, may feel both truths alive in you, like two voices singing in harmony. So as you rest in this thought, picture the countless synapses flickering inside your head at this very moment. Imagine them as stars in a night sky, connected by invisible filaments of light, pulsing in rhythm with the quiet beat of your heart. Each connection is fragile, each message fleeting, and yet together they create the continuity of who you are. You are, in a way, the sum of these bridges, the story told by their endless passing of signals. And yet, perhaps you are also more. The silence between the sparks, the space between the cells, the mystery that even science cannot name. For if the synapse is only a gap, why does it feel so much like a meeting place, a threshold, a door through which thought steps into being? Perhaps the brain itself is a vast network of doors, opening and closing in patterns too intricate to or measure. And perhaps as you drift deeper into this night, you may wonder, if every thought crosses a bridge, then where are those bridges leading? And what hidden shores might they reveal when we learn to listen more closely? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the inside of your head not as tissue and blood, but as a concert hall. Billions of neurons sit poised like musicians, each with its own instrument, each holding silence until the moment comes to play. The first spark is a note, the second an echo, and soon from this vast gathering a symphony begins to rise. This is the orchestra of your mind, a performance that never pauses, a composition that has been unfolding since the earliest stirrings of your life. It is easy to think of the brain as a machine, a collection of parts, switches, and wires, but tonight we will see it instead as music, not rigid but flowing, not mechanical but alive, a harmony built from sparks and silences woven together. Science measures the firing of cells, the synchrony of waves, the rhythms of circuits. Philosophy hears something more, the melody of thought, the chorus of memory, the soft song of the self. And as you listen, you may sense that both are true, that in every instant you are both the musician and the music. The orchestra begins with rhythm. Neurons do not simply fire at random, they pulse in patterns, keeping time with one another. Some beat slowly, marking broad measures like deep drums, while others trill quickly, filling the space with rapid notes. Brainwaves emerge from these rhythms, delta waves of deep sleep, slow and restorative, alpha waves of calm reflection, gamma waves of sharp focus and insight. To a neuroscientist, these are electrical oscillations, captured by electrodes on the scalp, drawn as lines that rise and fall like tides. To you, they are the changing moods of your inner life, the shifting tempos of wakefulness and rest, curiosity and dream. Just as in music, silence is as important as sound, the pauses, the spaces between the notes. So too in the brain, silence is not emptiness, but a form of balance, a rest between sparks that allows the melody of thought to breathe. The orchestra is not only about what plays, but also about what waits, what holds back, what lingers in stillness. And then comes harmony. In one region of the brain, neurons encode a face, in another, a name, in yet another, the warmth of recognition. Alone, these fragments are incomplete, isolated melodies. But when they play together, when their timing aligns, they create the seamless experience of memory. You see a friend, recall their voice, feel joy at their presence, all in a single instant. To science, this is integration, the binding of signals across networks. To philosophy, it is the wonder of unity, the miracle that scattered sparks can become a whole experience. The orchestra does not have a single conductor, no master neuron holding the baton. Instead, order emerges from interaction. Harmony arises from the interplay of countless players. This challenges us. If there is no central self, no fixed leader, then who is you? Are you the entire orchestra or simply the song that it plays? Perhaps you are both. The pattern itself and the awareness of the pattern, inseparable, inseparably real. And so, the orchestra continues, playing day and night without end. It performs when you laugh, when you solve a puzzle, when you dream. Sometimes its notes clash in dissonance, anxiety, confusion, disorder. Sometimes it plays with breathtaking beauty, insight, love, wonder. Each thought is a fleeting phrase in the larger composition, each memory a motif that returns again and again. And just as music can lift or soothe, The brain's orchestra responds to its environment. Stress can drive it into frantic tempo. Meditation can slow it into calming waves. What is remarkable is not only the sound it makes, but the fact that you, within it, can listen. You are both the orchestra and the audience, both the one who thinks and the one who notices thought. And so, as you drift further into this exploration, you might find yourself asking, if the brain is a symphony, then what is it that hears the music? Is awareness the ear, or is it the music itself, aware of its own unfolding? The orchestra of the mind plays on, and you are the mystery that lingers in every note. Imagine standing before a dark field at night. For a long time, there is only stillness, only shadow. Then, in the distance, a flicker. One flame ignites, then another still, until the field comes alive with fireflies darting in, graceful arcs. What was once chaos becomes a pattern, a rhythm, a constellation of lights. This is how neurons speak. Each firing is a tiny flame, and though a single spark holds little meaning, when billions ignite in shifting sequences, they form the very architecture of thought. Tonight, we will wander into this living fire, not to extinguish it, not to tame it, but to watch the shapes it draws. For within the sparks of neurons lie patterns, intricate, elusive, and profound. Science describes these as neural networks, circuits of activity that encode information. Philosophy sees in them something more. The possibility that thought itself is not the spark, but the pattern the sparks create. Not the flame, but the constellation. And so you rest here, caught between fire and form, between electricity and meaning. The first pattern we encounter is memory. A face, a song, a childhood room, all are stored not in one place, but in a choreography of neurons that fire together. Neurons that fire together, wire together, the saying goes, describing how patterns repeat and strengthen over time. To the neuroscientist, this is Hebbian plasticity, the strengthening of synaptic connections. To you, it is the reason. A single smell can flood your mind with memories, or why a melody long forgotten can stir tears in your eyes. A memory is not a photograph locked in a drawer, but a living pattern that must be replayed to exist, reconstructed from fragments scattered across the brain. Like a constellation in the sky, it is not the stars themselves, but the pattern we see among them that carries meaning. Yet here too lies mystery. When the pattern is recalled, why does it feel alive, as though the past breathes again in the present? The spark explains the mechanism, but the pattern gestures towards something more, an experience, an awareness that science has not yet captured. The second pattern is choice. When you decide to lift a hand, neurons in your motor cortex ignite in sequences, forming pathways that translate intention into action. Experiments show these patterns begin before you consciously feel the decision, sparks firing milliseconds before awareness arrives. To science, this is evidence that free will may be an illusion, that choice is only the recognition of a pattern, already in motion. To philosophy, it is a puzzle. If the pattern precedes awareness, then who is choosing? Perhaps the self is not the spark, but the flame that emerges from it, the afterglow of patterns already set in motion. Yet, when you lift your hand, when you make even the smallest decision, it feels undeniably yours, undeniably free. This is the paradox of patterns. They suggest determinism, yet they feel like freedom. The fire burns according to physical law, and yet within it, you sense agency, intention, a self that is more than the sum of sparks. The third pattern is identity. Who you are, your loves, your fears, your habits, emerges from recurring sequences of neurons that strengthen with repetition. Each time you practice a skill, recall a memory, repeat a thought, the pattern deepens, like footsteps worn into a path. Over years, these trails shape your sense of self, your narrative of I. But what if the patterns changed? In brain injury, in illness, In moments of profound transformation, the fire shifts, the circuits redraw. Does the self remain the same, or is it rewritten? To science, identity is plastic, ever-changing, always in flux. To philosophy, the self may be an illusion altogether, a story told by patterns but without a storyteller. You are both fire and form, both the spark and the shape it leaves behind. Perhaps identity is not fixed, but fluid, not a statue carved in stone, but a flame dancing in wind, always the same fire, always changing its shape. So we sit with these patterns, watching them, flicker and shift, trying to read the language they speak. They are physical, measurable, describable in equations. Yet they are also invisible, intangible, woven into the fabric of experience. Like constellations, they depend on perspective. From one angle, a cluster of stars. From another, a myth, a story, a guiding map. From one angle, neurons firing in circuits. From another, thought, choice, identity. And as you let these images settle into your mind, you may find yourself asking, are patterns in the fire enough to explain the fullness of being? Or is there something in the spaces between sparks? Something unmeasured? Something waiting to be named? The fire burns, the patterns shift, and you are both the witness and the flame, the dreamer and the dream. Close your eyes and imagine a conversation unfolding in perfect silence. No words, no sentences, no sound at all. Yet messages flow, ideas leap, instructions pass like ripples across a pond. This is the dialogue of neurons, a language without words, carried not by letters or symbols, but by pulses of electricity and whispers of chemistry. To you, thought feels like an inner voice, a stream of language inside your head. But beneath that surface, deeper and quieter, your brain communicates in patterns no tongue has ever spoken. Sparks fire, chemicals drift, and meaning is carried not in phrases, but in timing, in rhythm, in subtle variations that resemble music more than speech. Tonight, we will sink into this hidden language, the secret tongue of your neurons, and wonder, together, how silence can be so full of meaning. At its simplest, this language begins with the action potential, a wave of voltage running down the length of a neuron, a signal that says, something has happened. When it reaches the synapse, the small gap between cells, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, molecules that drift across the divide to awaken the next cell. This, science tells us, is the alphabet of the brain. Electrical sparks, paired with chemical messengers. But an alphabet alone does not make meaning. It is not the letters but the arrangement of them that forms poetry, not the single note but the sequence that forms melody. And so it is with neurons. Their meaning arises not from a single spike, but from the rhythm of many spikes together. Not from one messenger, but from the harmony of many. It is a language in which timing matters more than sound, in which silence itself can carry a message, a pause that changes everything. Imagine two neurons, one speaking, the other listening. The first does not say, now, later, yes, or no. Instead, it sends a rapid burst of sparks, or a slow, steady rhythm, or a long pause followed by a sudden flare. The listener interprets not the content of the spark, but its rhythm, its frequency, its relation to what came before. In this way, the brain speaks in pulses and pauses, a binary more fluid than computers, a code more dynamic than human tongues. To the neuroscientist, this is spike coding, rate coding, temporal coding, theories of how neurons carry information. To you, it is the music beneath thought, the heartbeat of understanding, the silent chant that allows the mind to speak to itself. Yet even this mechanical explanation does not capture the full wonder of the language. For neurons do not simply fire in isolation. They fire in chorus, creating oscillations, waves that sweep through regions of the brain. These brain rhythms, from the slow delta waves of deep sleep to the fast gamma waves of perception, are like dialects of the silent tongue. Each rhythm marks a different state of mind: drowsy, dreaming, focused, awake. Within them, neurons tune to each other, like musicians aligning to a tempo, allowing communication across vast networks. Science sees synchronization, frequency bands, measurable oscillations. Philosophy sees in them something more: the possibility that consciousness itself emerges not from sparks alone, but from rhythm, from harmony, from the song of silence. Could it be that thought is not just a code, but a symphony, not just a message, but a melody the brain endlessly plays? And here lies the paradox. You think in words, you remember in images, you dream in stories. Yet beneath all this, your brain knows no words, no images, no stories. Its language is not yours. Your conscious mind translates the silent code into the experience of thought, into the whispering voice you hear when you reflect, the inner monologue that feels so natural. But beneath it, neurons speak in an alien tongue, one you cannot directly access. You live in translation. The inner voice you think of as you is not the original language, but a rendering of the silent signals into a form your mind can understand. It is like watching subtitles in a film, never hearing the raw sound of the actors, only the translation on the screen. You wonder, what does the original script sound like? What would it be like to hear the brain in its native language? Unmediated, untranslated, raw and true. Some glimpses of this hidden speech reach you in altered states. In dreams, the translation falters, and neurons seem to speak more directly, producing images that are strange, non-linear, full of leaps and gaps. In meditation, as the inner voice grows quiet, you may sense a wordless awareness, a thought without language, a presence without narration. In moments of sudden insight, when an answer appears before you can explain why, you may be brushing against the deeper code, the silent computation of neurons offering you its result without words. Science calls these phenomena intuition, unconscious processing, implicit memory. Philosophy wonders if they are the closest you come to hearing the brain's native tongue, the language without words, the silence that speaks. The more you reflect on this, the more mysterious it becomes. If neurons speak in silence and your mind translates that silence into words, then what is thought? Is it the raw code, the pulses and rhythms? Or is it the translation, the voice you hear? And if thought is always translated, then do you ever truly know yourself, or only the version of yourself rendered into language? It is like reading a poem in translation. Beautiful, moving, but never quite the original. Somewhere beneath your words, your mind is whispering in a tongue you do not know, a language carried by sparks and rhythms, pulses and pauses, silence and fire. And so you rest tonight, listening to the language you cannot hear, the dialogue that never uses words. You are a listener to your own mind, a translator of a code more ancient than speech, more intricate than poetry. In this silence, meaning is carried not by sound, but by rhythm, not by voice, but by fire. And as you drift further into this thought, you may find yourself asking, if neurons speak in silence, then who is it that listens? And what other languages might yet be waiting inside you, unspoken, unheard, waiting to be understood? Imagine walking through a quiet forest at dusk. The air is still, the trees motionless, and yet unseen currents drift all around you. A faint fragrance from moss, a trace of pine, the invisible exhale of earth itself. You cannot see these molecules, but they shape your experience of the moment, telling your body to breathe deeper, telling your mind that this place is calm. In your brain, something similar is happening, endlessly and silently. Between the sparks of neurons, where electricity stops, chemistry begins. Molecules drift across tiny gaps, ferrying messages in whispers too small for the eye to catch. These are neurotransmitters, and they carry emotions, decisions, memories, and moods. Without them, The fire of neurons would be sparks with no bridge, signals with no receiver. Tonight, we turn our gaze to these whispers, these chemical voices of the mind, and wonder together how invisible molecules can sculpt the landscape of thought. At first glance, the process appears mechanical. A neuron fires, voltage racing down, its slender axon until it reaches the end. There, vesicles, tiny sacs filled with neurotransmitters, wait like messengers at a gate. The spark opens the gate, and the vesicles release their cargo into the synaptic cleft, the impossibly narrow gap between one cell and the next. Within milliseconds, these molecules bind to receptors, opening channels, creating cascades, prompting the next neuron to fire. To science, this is the simple relay of information, a chemical handshake across a microscopic divide. But to you, it is the substance of feeling, dopamine whispering anticipation, serotonin spreading calm, glutamate urging thought forward, GABA pulling thought back into silence. Each molecule a character, each whisper a suggestion, each balance or imbalance the difference between joy and despair. The forest of your brain is alive not just with sparks, but with scents, tastes, molecules drifting like wind between trees. Consider dopamine, the molecule of seeking, of reward, of possibility. When you anticipate something, when you reach for it, when you imagine what might be, dopamine rises. It is not happiness itself, but the pursuit of it, the forward-leaning motion of the mind. It whispers, "Go on, try again, just a little further." Without it, you feel listless, unmotivated, unable to summon desire. Too much, and you feel restless, compulsive, trapped in cycles of wanting. Dopamine is not a voice of contentment, but of striving, a spark carried on a chemical tide. Contrast this with serotonin, the molecule of balance, of quiet contentment. When it drifts through your synapses, you feel a softening, a gentleness, a mood that leans toward peace. Together, dopamine and serotonin create a dance of restlessness and calm, of forward motion and quiet presence. One whispers, "Move," the other, "Stay," and you are the balance between them. A being suspended between hunger and satisfaction, desire and contentment, striving and stillness. Other neurotransmitters carry their own whispers, each subtle yet essential. Glutamate excites, driving neurons to fire, fueling learning and memory. GABA calms, telling neurons to pause, to hold silence, to rest. Acetylcholine sharpens attention, focusing the mind like a lens. Oxytocin warms connection, bonding you to others, softening fear in the presence of trust. Each is invisible, each is tiny, and yet together they create the whole landscape of your inner life. Imagine a painting, not in bold strokes, but in layers of translucent wash. Each whisper is a color, faint on its own, but layered together. They form the image of you, your thoughts, your moods, your very sense of self. To science, these are neurotransmitters binding to receptors. To philosophy, they are the breath of the mind, the sense of thought, the invisible perfumes that make consciousness feel alive. The mystery deepens when we realize how these whispers are shaped not just by biology, but by experience. Stress floods the brain with cortisol, changing how neurotransmitters flow, bending the whispers into louder shouts. Meditation, by contrast, increases GABA and serotonin, quieting restlessness, smoothing the inner landscape. Love surges oxytocin, fear spikes norepinephrine, sleep releases melatonin, dreams swirl with acetylcholine. The brain is not fixed. It is always responding, always adapting, always reshaping its whispers to match the story of your life. If electricity is the fire, chemistry is the wind, carrying the sparks into patterns that feel like mood, like desire, like awareness itself. Yet, if so much of thought is chemical, then where, you may ask, is the soul? Where is the self? If joy can be altered by a pill, if despair can be lifted by a molecule, is your experience only chemistry, only the shifting balance of whispers in the dark? This question sits heavy and unresolved. On one side, science insists that neurotransmitters are sufficient explanation, that consciousness is only chemistry and electricity, nothing more. On the other, philosophy resists, pointing out that molecules alone do not explain why joy feels like light, why sorrow feels like gravity, why thought feels like presence. A molecule can be measured, its receptor mapped, its pathway traced, but the experience it creates cannot be reduced to the molecule itself. Serotonin is not calm. It is only a condition that allows calm to be felt. Dopamine is not desire. It is only the chemical tide on which desire sails. The whispers of molecules explain how, but not why, not what it is like. And so you sit in the tension, listening to the forest of your brain rustle with invisible breezes, wondering what part of you is chemistry and what part is beyond it. Tonight, as you drift into rest, you may notice your own chemical whispers at work. The slow release of melatonin guides your body towards sleep. The calming effect of GABA softens the sparks of thought. Serotonin offers peace. Dopamine quiets its urging, and your brain slips into the rhythm of night. You are both the forest and the wind, both the spark and the whisper. Your thoughts are built of molecules, yet they rise into meanings no molecule could contain. And as you close your eyes, you may find yourself asking, are you listening to chemistry? Or is chemistry only the backdrop to something deeper, something that still waits in silence beyond the reach of molecules? Close your eyes and imagine a vast landscape unfolding not across the earth, but within the boundaries of your skull. Valleys and rivers, mountains and plains, paths that twist and cross in secret ways, all invisible, all mapped in silence. This is the geography of the brain, an inner world as intricate as any continent, with regions that specialize, borders that shift, and highways of connection running deep below the surface. Neuroscience has given names to these places: cortex, hippocampus, amygdala, cerebellum. But behind the technical terms lies something far more poetic. A hidden country where thought takes root, where memory is cultivated, where emotion rises like sudden weather. Tonight, we will walk this interior terrain, tracing its contours gently, not as cartographers of anatomy alone, but as travelers who wonder what it means for the mind to have a map at all. Begin at the cortex, the rippled surface of the brain, grey matter folded into valleys and peaks like a mountain range seen from above. Here is where sensation meets interpretation, where vision is translated into sight, where sound becomes hearing, where touch becomes meaning. One valley, the occipital lobe, fills with images. Another, the temporal lobe, hums with sound and memory. The parietal lobe constructs space, while the frontal lobe shapes intention, decision, and personality. Science describes these areas as specialized modules, each with a function, each contributing a piece of the puzzle. Philosophy sees a different mystery. If the brain is divided into territories, then where is the mind? Is it spread across them, all, or does it reside in none, arising instead from the whole geography at once? The cortex is a landscape of parts, but consciousness feels whole, seamless, unbroken. Journey deeper, and you reach the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped curve tucked within the folds of the temporal lobe. Here, memory is written and rewritten, the past replayed so it can be carried into the future. Without the hippocampus, experience slips away, never rooted, never recalled. It is not a library storing books, but a gardener planting seeds, nurturing them until they grow into lasting recollections scattered across the cortex. To science, this is consolidation, the transformation of short-term into long-term memory. To you, it is the reason you remember your first home, your first love, the sound of laughter that shaped your childhood. The hippocampus is a landmark of identity, a place where geography meets time, where the terrain of the mind holds the rivers of the past. And yet, when memory fails, when this landmark is damaged, who are you then? The map remains, but the stories fade and the self becomes unmoored. Not far away lies the amygdala, small and almond-shaped, yet powerful. It is the storm center of emotion, the quickening of fear, the surge of anger, the rush of joy. Like sudden weather, it can darken or brighten the entire landscape of the brain. To science, it is an ancient structure tuned to survival, deciding in moments whether to flee, to fight, to embrace. To philosophy, it is the reminder that the mind is not only thought but also feeling, that the geography of the brain is shaped not just by logic but by storms of passion. A single spark in the amygdala can paint the whole map with dread or delight, showing how one small landmark can reshape the terrain of experience. The geography of the mind is not static. It is alive, pulsing with shifting climates, sudden rains, unexpected sunlight. Descend further and you find the cerebellum, the little brain at the base of it all, once thought only to govern movement, balance, and coordination. Now science reveals it speaks to thought itself, refining timing, smoothing patterns, orchestrating not only physical gestures, but mental ones too. It is the quiet architect of fluidity, ensuring that thought does not stumble, that ideas arrive. In rhythm, that memory recalls with grace. If the cortex is the mountains and valleys, the cerebellum is the river that makes travel possible, connecting, smoothing, carrying. Philosophy looks at this hidden role and wonders. How many more landscapes within us remain unseen, underestimated, waiting to reveal their quiet influence? The geography of the mind is vast, and we have only begun to chart its outlines. Between these landmarks stretch highways of connection, the white matter tracks, millions of axons bundling together like roads across a country. They carry messages between regions, ensuring that vision meets memory, that decision meets motion, that feeling meets thought. The corpus callosum, broad and shining, links the two hemispheres, letting left and right, logic and intuition, exchange their secrets. Science maps these highways with imaging, tracing the pathways where sparks travel. Philosophy sees them as bridges, threads that bind the whole geography into one nation, one mind. For what is a country without its roads, and what is a brain without its connections? Alone, each landmark is only a piece. Together, through these highways, they form a living landscape that thinks, remembers, feels, and dreams. And still, the mystery deepens. If the brain is a geography, where in it is the self? Is it in the cortex, painting images of the world? In the hippocampus, storing the past? In the amygdala, burning with feeling? Or in the highways that bind them all? No landmark alone feels sufficient, and yet the self feels real, centered, whole. Perhaps the self is not a location, but the map itself, the whole geography taken together, an emergent presence that cannot be found by searching any single place. You are not a landmark, but a country, not a river or a mountain, but the entire terrain unfolding at once. As you let this geography settle into your imagination, consider how hidden it all remains. You cannot see your own hippocampus, cannot touch your amygdala, cannot walk the highways of your white matter, and yet you live within them, shaped by their curves, guided by their terrain. The geography of the mind is hidden, but it is yours. Tonight, as you drift deeper into thought, you may wonder, if the brain is a map, then who is the traveller, and where, in this vast country of silence and sparks, do you truly dwell? Close your eyes, and a sound drifts back from years ago. A laugh you had forgotten, the creak of a familiar floor, the voice of someone you once loved. It does not matter that the moment is gone. Its echo lingers, as though time itself bends to return what it once carried away. Memory is not simply storage, not a cabinet filled with neatly labelled files. It is an echo, fragile and resonant, called forth from the living patterns of the brain. Each time you remember, the past is not retrieved but rebuilt, an echo reconstructed from fragments, reshaped by the present, polished by imagination. Tonight, we will linger with these echoes, wandering through the chambers where memory hides, asking not only how it is formed, but what it means to feel the past alive again in the present. Science begins with the mechanics. The hippocampus plays its part, guiding experience into long-term form, while networks across the cortex bind sight, sound, and emotion together into a single memory. To recall is to replay, to send sparks racing down the old pathways so they fire again, bringing forth an image, a sound, a sensation. But the replay is never perfect. Each echo changes as it passes, reshaped by new experiences, influenced by the emotions of the moment. A childhood memory recalled in joy feels warm and golden. Recalled in sorrow, it grows heavy with loss. The brain is not a recorder, but a storyteller, and every story told changes with its telling. This is why two people can remember the same event so differently. Why even your own memories shift like shadows in changing light. To science, this is reconsolidation, the reshaping of neural patterns. To philosophy, it is the poetry of memory, the reminder that the past is not fixed but alive, mutable, as fragile and vibrant as you are. Think of the different kinds of memory. There is episodic memory, the echo of experience itself, the day you first swam in the ocean, the afternoon when rain fell soft against your window, the night you first looked up and saw the Milky Way. These are memories tied to the self, to moments woven into the narrative of I. Then there is semantic memory, the echo of knowledge, the fact that Paris is a city, that water boils, that the earth circles the sun. These are not tied to moments, but to truths, learned and carried forward. There is also procedural memory, the memory of the body, the way your fingers remember the keys of a piano, the way your legs remember how to ride a bicycle, long after your mind forgets the lesson. Each is an echo, but each resonates differently. One as story, one as fact, one as action. And together they form the fabric of identity, the continuity that makes today feel connected to yesterday, the thread that makes you more than a fleeting present. Yet memory is paradoxical. It can be achingly vivid and yet entirely false. Experiments show how easily false memories can be planted, how suggestion and imagination can create echoes of things that never were. You may recall an event in detail, the colors, the faces, the words spoken, only to learn later that it never happened at all. To science, this is the fragility of the system, the imperfection of reconstruction. To philosophy, it raises deeper questions. If memory is fallible, if it can lie, then what is the self built upon it? Are you a collection of true echoes, or of stories you have told yourself so often they feel true? The echo of memory is not always the voice of fact, but it is always the voice of identity. Perhaps it matters less whether it happened and more that you believe it did, that it shapes who you are now. And what of the memories you cannot reach, the ones that lie hidden, silent, lost? Some are buried too deep, forgotten not because they lacked importance, but because they were never fully encoded, never planted firmly enough to grow. Others are hidden by trauma, sealed away like a cave too painful to enter. Yet even forgotten memories leave traces, echoes that shape your choices, your fears, your dreams, even if you never hear them directly. You are not only the memories you recall, you are also the echoes you cannot reach, the past that whispers beneath awareness. Science calls this implicit memory unconscious influence. Philosophy wonders if the self is haunted by forgotten rooms, by voices still shaping us from the shadows of the mind. There is a gentleness, too, in the way memory fades. Faces blur, voices grow faint, details dissolve like mist in morning light. At first, this feels like loss. But it may also be mercy, the mind's way of softening what would otherwise be too sharp, too heavy to carry. To forget is not always to lose, but sometimes to heal, to make room for new echoes, new stories. In this way, memory and forgetting are partners, balancing presence with absence, carrying some things forward while laying others to rest. And you, in the midst of this, are both the keeper of echoes and the one who lets them fade, both the archivist and the dreamer. As you rest tonight, you may notice memory at work even in your sleep. Dreams replay fragments of the day, stitching them into new patterns, strengthening some echoes, discarding others. The brain hums with consolidation, storing what matters, releasing what does not. Your sleeping mind is a silent librarian, working through the night to ensure that tomorrow you carry forward the echoes that matter most. You are not conscious of this labor, but it is happening all the same. A reminder that memory is not only what you recall, but also what your brain keeps alive for you without your knowing. So the echoes of memory ripple on, shaping who you are, carrying the past into the present. They are fragile, mutable, sometimes false, sometimes fading, yet they are also luminous, capable of bringing the past alive in a heartbeat. A voice, a smell, a song, and suddenly you are elsewhere, elsewhen, another self living again in this one. Science explains the circuitry, the synapses, the reconsolidation. Philosophy sits in awe of the mystery, how something gone can still feel so alive, how the past can sing in the silence of the present. And as you let these thoughts drift, you may find yourself asking, if you are made of echoes, then who or what is the one that listens to them? Close your eyes, and already you begin to drift. The world softens, the edges blur, and thought loosens its grip. Slowly, quietly, you slip into the theatre of dreams. Here, the laws of waking life bend. Time stretches, places dissolve, faces merge and separate, and impossible things unfold as if they were inevitable. You fly without wings. You meet those long gone. You walk into a room you've never seen, yet it feels achingly familiar. Dreams, fragile, vivid, strange. Tonight, we enter this secret cinema of the mind, guided by the science of sleep and the wonder of imagination. Science begins with the rhythms of the brain. As you sleep, your mind cycles through stages. Light sleep, deep slow-wave sleep, and finally, the rapid eye movement stage, REM, when your eyes flicker beneath closed lids and your brain burns with activity almost as intense as wakefulness. It is in REM, scientists believe, that dreams burst forth most vividly. Neurons fire in intricate patterns, weaving together fragments of memory, sensation, and thought. The dreaming brain is not idle. It is a storm, a symphony, a laboratory of the imagination. Yet unlike waking thought, dreams are not bound by logic. They wander, they leap, they blend. They make the impossible feel natural, the absurd inevitable. Why does the brain dream? Here, the debate continues. Some scientists argue it is the mind rehearsing, practicing survival, preparing for dangers by simulating them in safe space. Others see it as the brain's house cleaning, sorting, filing, consolidating memories, discarding what no longer serves. Still others suggest dreams are the mind's playground, a byproduct of creativity itself, giving you a nightly rehearsal of imagination. And philosophers ask, perhaps dreams are not only function, but revelation. Perhaps they show you that reality itself is, in some sense, dreamlike, constructed, malleable, dependent on perception. When you wake, you call the dream unreal. But, while it lasted, you believed it completely. How different is that from waking life? Consider the strangeness of dream time. In waking life, minutes are steady, ticking in measured rhythm. In dreams, hours may pass in a second, or a second may stretch into infinity. You may fall asleep for 10 minutes and live through an entire lifetime within the dream. The brain does not measure time with clocks, but with experience. An experience can stretch or collapse. To scientists, this reveals the flexibility of neural processing. To philosophers, it whispers a deeper question. If time is elastic in dreams, might it also be elastic in waking life, only anchored by the limits of perception? The dreaming brain reminds us, time is not always as steady as we think. Think, too, of the characters in your dreams. Faces appear, some familiar, some strange. You may speak with them, fear them, embrace them. But who are they? They are, in some sense, you, creations of your own mind. And yet they often surprise you, saying things you did not expect, behaving in ways you cannot predict. How can your own brain generate a character that feels other, a self that is not yourself? Neuroscience calls this the improvisation of the unconscious. Philosophy marvels at it. If you can create other selves in dreams, then perhaps the self you feel while awake is also a creation, a construct, a mask worn by deeper processes. In dreams, the boundary between you and not you dissolves, and you glimpse how fragile that boundary may always be. There are dreams of fear too, nightmares that grip you in the dark, flooding your body with the chemicals of alarm. These are not accidents. The amygdala, center of fear, is active during REM, and dreams often stage your deepest anxieties. Falling, being chased, losing those you love. These are the shadows your brain rehearses. Some believe this is evolutionary rehearsal. Better to face danger in dream than in waking. Others see it as the psyche's way of processing unresolved tension. And yet, even nightmares once daylight comes can serve as art, story, symbol. Out of the terrors of the night have come poems, paintings, entire mythologies. The dreaming brain creates monsters, but also teaches you to face them. And then there are the lucid dreams. Perhaps you have felt it, the sudden realization while dreaming, that you are dreaming. The walls do not crumble. The dream does not fade. Instead, awareness blooms within it. You fly because you choose to. You summon landscapes, summon faces, summon impossible wonders. Lucid dreaming is the strange middle ground between waking and dreaming, when the self wakes up inside the dream without leaving it. To science, this is metacognition bleeding into REM, self-awareness activated while the world is still imagined. To philosophy, it is a revelation. If you can wake inside a dream, might you one day wake inside waking life? Might reality itself be a dream awaiting lucidity? The dreaming brain has always been a source of meaning. Ancient cultures saw dreams as messages from gods, ancestors, or spirits. Shamans traveled through dreams as through landscapes, seeking wisdom. Psychoanalysis saw dreams as windows into the unconscious, symbols of desires unspoken. Today, neuroscience maps the circuits, measuring waves and firing patterns. Yet even as the science grows clearer, the wonder remains. A dream is never only a pattern of neurons. It is also a story, a landscape, an experience as real as any waking memory. Your mind, while you sleep, is an artist, a playwright, a mystic, painting the canvas of the night. And what of the dreams you forget? Most dissolve upon waking, slipping away like mist in the morning sun. You may reach for them and find only fragments, a face, a word, a flicker of color. Yet even forgotten dreams may shape you. The brain still processes emotions, still consolidates memory, still practices survival, even if your waking mind does not remember the story. Forgotten or not, dreams do their work. They are the silent companions of every night, shaping your waking self in ways you may never notice. Now imagine yourself drifting deeper into the night. Your body is still. Your breathing softens. Yet within, the brain dances. Images flicker, echoes merge, fragments of memory combine into impossible wholes. The dreaming brain is both laboratory and theatre, scientist and poet, architect and wanderer. It teaches, it heals, it frightens, it inspires. And when you wake, you carry with you its traces, a lingering feeling, a strange image, a spark of creativity, or simply the deep rest it allowed. So tonight, as you surrender to sleep, remember that you are stepping into a world built entirely by your own mind, a world that shows you what reality can be when freed from rules, a world that reminds you that your brain is not only an organ of thought, but of imagination, of story, of wonder. And as you drift, let yourself ask the soft question. If the dreaming brain creates worlds each night, then how different is the waking world you live in each day? Who are you? Not your name, not the labels others give you, not even the fleeting memories that make up your story. Who is the silent witness behind your eyes, the one hearing these words right now, the one who feels the warmth of the present moment? Consciousness. It is the most intimate fact of existence, and yet the most mysterious. Science can measure neurons, map networks, even predict decisions before you know them yourself. But the raw feeling of awareness, the sense of I am, remains beyond full explanation. Tonight, we drift into that mystery, balancing science and philosophy, certainty and doubt, presence and illusion. Neuroscience tells us that consciousness arises from the activity of billions of neurons firing in synchrony. Electrical impulses ripple across the cortex, integrating signals from vision, sound, touch, memory, emotion. Out of this storm emerges a unified field: your awareness, your sense of being. Some theories call it integration, the brain stitching together countless threads into a seamless whole. Others call it global broadcasting, information made available across the mind, lighting up like a stage. Yet here lies the puzzle. No matter how detailed the map, no matter how precise the model, science cannot yet explain why it feels like something to be you. Why is there not only processing, but presence? Why does the brain not simply compute silently, like a machine, without the glow of inner experience? Philosophers call this the hard problem of consciousness. It is one thing to explain how neurons process information. It is another to explain why that processing is accompanied by subjective experience. Qualia, the redness of red, the ache of sorrow, the taste of sweetness, the felt flow of time. No formula yet bridges the gap between matter and mind. Some argue that consciousness is an emergent property. When complexity crosses a threshold, awareness blooms. Others suggest that consciousness is not created by the brain, but revealed through it, like light passing through a prism. And still others take the bold step. Perhaps consciousness is not produced at all, but fundamental, woven into the fabric of reality, as basic as space and time. Consider the self, the sense of I. It feels solid, continuous, like the axis of your existence. Yet science shows it may be more fragile. The brain constructs the self as a narrative, weaving memories, desires, and sensations into a story. Damage to certain regions can dissolve this story, altering personality, even erasing the feeling of ownership over one's thoughts. Meditation can quiet the self until it fades into silence. Psychedelics can scatter the self into fragments, revealing that what you thought was solid is, perhaps, a mask. If the self can vanish, if it can be altered or dissolved, then what is it? Is it a real entity, or only a convenient fiction? Consciousness remains, even when the self flickers. So perhaps you are not the story, but the silent awareness in which stories appear. Contrast frames this mystery. Machines can process information faster than any brain, but they do not seem to feel. Animals dream, communicate, suffer, perhaps even reflect. But where do we draw the line of awareness? Some argue that consciousness blooms wherever information integrates, even in simple systems. Others restrict it to human-like complexity. Still others see it everywhere, in every atom, in every process. Panpsychism whispering that awareness pervades reality. If this is true, then your consciousness is not an island, but a ripple in a universal ocean. And if not, then why you? Why here? Why now? Consciousness stands at the center of mystery, a flame burning brightly against the vast unknown. Think of illusions. When you gaze into a mirror, you see yourself, yet that image is reversed, incomplete. When you hear an echo, your mind locates it wrongly. In waking life too, your brain filters and edits constantly. You do not perceive reality directly, but through a construction, a rendering generated moment by moment. If all perception is a dream shaped by neurons, then is consciousness itself part of the illusion? Or is it the one truth behind all illusion? The paradox is clear. You cannot step outside of consciousness to study it. Every experiment, every theory, every thought unfolds within it. It is both subject and object, the observer and the observed. Spiritual traditions have long sought to answer what science still questions. In Buddhism, the self is seen as empty, a bundle of processes mistaken for permanence. In Hindu philosophy, consciousness is Brahman, the underlying reality from which all arises. In Western thought, Descartes declared, "I think, therefore I am," grounding existence in awareness itself. And yet modern neuroscience replies, you think less than you believe. Your brain decides before you do. Your choices emerge from unconscious, processing, and only later do you take ownership. So where does the I reside? Perhaps in no single place. Perhaps it is the dance between brain and awareness, between narrative and presence. Now imagine yourself drifting deeper into this question. You breathe, you listen, you exist. You cannot deny that. Whatever else is uncertain, your awareness is real, immediate, undeniable. And yet, what is it made of? Not atoms, not molecules, not circuits. It is not weight, not color, not sound. It is the invisible stage upon which all else appears. You cannot measure it directly, but without it, nothing would matter. Awareness is both the most familiar and the most mysterious thing in the universe. Some scientists attempt to simulate it, building machines of increasing complexity, teaching them to learn, to adapt, to converse. But does conversation equal awareness? Does intelligence imply subjectivity? Could a machine ever say, not only I compute, but I am? If so, would that consciousness be the same as yours? Or would it be a different kind, alien, and unimaginable? The search for artificial consciousness mirrors the search for our own origins. In seeking to create it, we hope to understand ourselves, but the mystery persists. Consciousness slips through the net of explanation like water through fingers. And so, you drift in reflection. Consciousness is not a puzzle you must solve tonight. It is a mystery to rest within. Feel the strangeness. You are listening. You are thinking. You are aware. The self feels close, but it may only be a mask. Behind it is the witness, the still center, the light that makes all else visible. As you sink into stillness, let this question remain with you like a whisper. If consciousness is the very fabric of your being, then what happens when you ask, who is the one asking? Close your eyes, and behind the darkness, memories stir. A childhood room, a long-forgotten voice, the scent of rain on summer pavement. Each memory feels like a treasure, a fragment of who you are. Yet memory is not a perfect mirror. It is a shifting reflection, polished and smudged by time. Tonight, we wander into this mirror of memory, guided by the science of the brain and the wonder of the self. For in memory lives both truth and illusion, both identity and change. To remember is to anchor, but also to dream. Neuroscience reveals that memory is not stored like files in a cabinet, waiting to be pulled out. Instead, memory is woven into networks of neurons. When you recall, you do not retrieve a fixed image, you reconstruct it, reactivating patterns that once fired. In this way, memory is less like a photograph and more like a painting, repainted each time it is seen. Studies show that every recollection subtly alters the memory itself, reshaping it according to present context. This is why your past shifts as you grow, why two people remember the same event differently, why memories may feel so vivid yet diverge from fact. The brain is not a passive archive, it is a storyteller. There are many kinds of memory, each with its own rhythm. Sensory memory holds fleeting impressions, the afterimage of light, the echo of sound. Short-term memory holds what you think about now, fragile and limited, easily lost. Long-term memory endures, skills, knowledge, life stories, woven deep into the hippocampus and cortex. Yet even long-term memory is not immune to forgetting. The brain prunes, discards, reshapes. Forgetting is not failure, but function, preventing overload, making space for the present. You are not meant to remember everything. You are meant to remember enough to survive, to love, to learn, to grow. Contrast frames the puzzle. Memory feels like permanence, yet it is impermanence. You may, hold a moment, dear, but even as you revisit it, it changes. A photo may preserve a face, but your memory of that face bends with emotion. Science shows that false memories can be implanted with suggestion, so vivid that they feel as real as any truth. This raises a question, both scientific and philosophical. If memory is fallible, if it is constructed and reconstructed, then to what extent is your identity, built from memory, also a construction? Are you the same person you were as a child, or are you a river of memory, flowing and reshaping with each passing year? Think of nostalgia. A song plays, and suddenly you are back in a room decades gone. The memory is vivid, but it is not only the past you see, it is the past seen through the lens of now. Nostalgia is bittersweet because it is both presence and absence, the presence of memory and the absence of what can never return. Neuroscience might describe it as hippocampal reactivation, but to you, it feels like time folding, like walking through a doorway between worlds. Memory is not simply data, it is feeling, color, meaning. It is the heartbeat of your story. There are memories of the body too, procedural memories, habits and skills that live not in conscious thought but in muscle, in repetition. Riding a bicycle, typing words, playing an instrument, these are stored, not in narrative, but in movement. You do not remember learning them step by step each time. You simply do them. The body remembers in silence, teaching you that memory is not only mental, but embodied. Even as your conscious memories fade, the body holds on, reminding you that memory is layered, that forgetting one kind does not mean all is lost. Yet memory has its shadows. Trauma can burn itself into the nervous system, returning in flashes, unbidden, painful. Memory may protect, but it may also haunt. Science shows that traumatic memories are encoded differently, often fragmented, lacking narrative structure, yet powerfully vivid. Healing, then, is often the weaving of trauma into story, turning fragments into a thread that can be held. Memory, even at its most painful, can be transformed. The brain is plastic, capable of new connections, of rewiring. In this lies hope. Memory does not imprison you. It can change, and with it, you can change too. Dreams and memory are intertwined as well. In sleep, especially during REM, the brain replays, reshuffles, integrates. It strengthens connections, discards clutter, tests possibilities. This is why sleep supports learning, why you wake with clarity after rest. In this nightly theatre, memory is not only preserved, but reshaped, adapted for the life awaiting you in waking. Dreams remind you, memory is not a static archive, but a living process, always becoming. Philosophy wonders, if memory is malleable, if it can be lost or altered, then where lies the true self? When amnesia erases memory, does the person cease to be who they were? If identity is a story, what happens when the story is forgotten? Some traditions suggest that self is not memory at all, but pure awareness, unchanged even as memories flicker and fade. Others see identity as river, always in flux, no fixed essence beneath the flow. Memory is both anchor and current. Without it, you would drift, but with it, you are never the same person twice. Now imagine standing before a mirror that does not reflect your face, but your past. The faces of those you have loved, the moments that shaped you, the mistakes, the triumphs. all reflected back, shimmering, imperfect, shifting. This is memory, a mirror not of glass, but of mind. And like all mirrors, it does not show the world as it is, but as it appears, coloured by light, by angle, by the one who looks. To remember is to gaze into this mirror, to see both yourself and the distortions that shape you. And so, as you rest tonight, feel the mirror of memory within you. Each thought, each dream, each feeling becomes a fragment added to the mosaic of who you are. Tomorrow, you will remember some of this and forget some. But both the remembering and the forgetting are part of the rhythm of mind. Memory is fragile and fallible, yet it is also beautiful, carrying your story, even as it reshapes it. As you drift deeper into night, hold softly to this reflection. If memory is a mirror that changes with every glance, then who is the one gazing back from its shifting surface? Open your eyes, and the world floods in. Light pours through the lenses of your eyes, sound ripples into your ears, touch whispers against your skin. Instantly, without effort, the world feels real, solid, unquestionable. But pause, and a quiet mystery emerges. You do not see reality as it is, but as your brain constructs it. Every colour, every sound, every shape is not outside you. It is within you, crafted by neurons into a seamless stage. Tonight, we step into the architecture of perception, where biology and philosophy converge, where certainty dissolves into wonder, and where the solid ground of reality reveals itself to be a carefully built illusion. Neuroscience tells us that perception begins with receptors, rods and cones in the eyes capturing photons, hair cells in the ear vibrating with waves of air, touch receptors firing with pressure and heat. These signals are raw, incomplete, fragmented. The brain must weave them together into a world. This weaving happens at incredible speed, so fast you rarely notice the gaps. But the truth is this: you never experience the world directly. You experience a model, a rendering your brain builds moment by moment. Perception is construction, not passive reception. You see not light itself, but the interpretation of light. You hear not sound waves, but the brain's translation of vibration into tone. Reality as you know it is an inner theatre. Contrast sharpens this insight. Optical illusions reveal how perception can be tricked. Two lines of equal length appear unequal. A static image seems to ripple with motion. A circle looks larger or smaller, depending on its neighbours. Your brain does not present the world neutrally. It interprets guesses, fills in gaps. Hallucinations push this further. The brain can generate sights and sounds with no external cause, convincing and vivid. Dreams push further still. Entire worlds constructed without input at all. These contrasts remind you that perception is not a window onto reality, but a construction, a map that may or may not match the territory. Consider colour. Science shows that colour is not an inherent property of objects. It is a translation of wavelength into sensation. A red apple reflects certain wavelengths, but redness is not in the apple. It is in your brain. Bees, with different receptors, see ultraviolet patterns invisible to you. Birds, with 4 cones instead of 3, perceive colours beyond human imagination. Thus, the apple is not red in any ultimate sense. It is red to you, constructed by your perception. Philosophy asks, if every species perceives differently, then what is the world really like, independent of perception? Is there a reality beyond colour, beyond sound, beyond sensation, or is all reality, for every creature, always filtered, always constructed? Time, too, bends in perception. Neuroscience shows that time is not experienced evenly. In moments of danger, seconds feel stretched. In boredom, minutes feel endless. In joy, hours vanish in a blink. This elasticity comes not from the outside world, but from the architecture of perception. Your brain marks time with events, changes, rhythms, When few events occur, time drags. When many occur, time compresses. Thus, even the flow of time, the most fundamental rhythm of life, is shaped by perception. Science measures seconds with clocks, but your experience of them is fluid, a river that speeds and slows according to the mind's design. Now imagine the unity of the senses. Multi-sensory integration allows you to perceive the world as whole. When you watch a person speak, your brain synchronizes lip movement with sound, aligning sight and hearing. When these signals misalign, as in ventriloquist illusions, the brain resolves the conflict, sometimes choosing wrongly. Even flavor is a fusion. Taste on the tongue, smell in the nose, texture in touch, all combined into one perception. The architecture of perception is not a set of separate rooms, but a cathedral of integration, where fragments meet and merge into a single experience you call reality. Philosophers push the question further. If perception constructs reality, then what is the difference between appearance and truth? Kant argued that we never know the thing in itself, only the appearance shaped by categories of perception. Modern neuroscience echoes this. Perception evolved not to reveal truth, but to guide survival. You do not see atoms, forces, quantum fields. You see shapes, colors, patterns useful for action. Reality may be far stranger than perception allows, but you experience only the useful slice. So ask softly, do you live in the real world or in a survival simulation sculpted by evolution? Contrast again brings clarity. Consider those who perceive differently. Synesthetes experience colors when they hear sounds, or tastes when they see words. For them, perception cross-wires into new architectures, blending senses into rich tapestries. For those with blindness or deafness, the architecture shifts. Other senses grow sharper, filling the gap, remapping the brain's world. These variations remind us that perception is flexible, not fixed. There is not one reality, but many architectures, each shaped by the body and brain that perceives. And then there is perception of the self. You perceive your body, your position in space, your actions as your own. Yet experiments show how fragile this can be. In the rubber hand illusion, people feel ownership of a fake hand simply by synchronizing touch and sight. Virtual reality can trick the brain into inhabiting bodies not its own. Even the sense of self-location, the feeling of being behind your eyes, can be shifted, leading to out-of-body experiences. The architecture of perception does not only build the world around you, it builds you. The self you feel may be as constructed as any color or sound. Pause and breathe. Perception feels immediate, effortless, unquestionable. Yet it is architecture, neurons weaving, senses combining, brain interpreting, story unfolding. It is a construction that both reveals and conceals. It gives you a world vivid and rich, yet hides the machinery that makes it possible. And so, as you drift tonight, feel the wonder that your every sensation, the softness of the pillow, the rhythm of breath, the echo of these words, is not outside, but inside. The world you experience is not the world itself, but the world as your mind shapes it. And as you wonder, let a question linger gently. If perception is architecture, then who is the one living inside this cathedral of experience? Close your eyes and imagine a quiet city within your skull. Streets shimmer with electric sparks, tiny signals racing along avenues of neurons, leaping across synapses like dancers in a luminous ballet. This is the language of the brain, a dialogue of cells speaking in pulses, chemicals and patterns, invisible yet alive. Every thought, every feeling, every decision emerges from these whispered conversations. Tonight we wander through this secret city, tracing the messages that make your mind alive and listening for the poetry hidden in the rhythm of synapses. Neurons are the citizens of this city, each uniquely shaped, each with a purpose. They reach toward one another with branching dendrites, sending signals across tiny gaps, the synapses, where neurotransmitters bridge the divide. Some signals are fast and fleeting, electrical sparks racing along axons. Others are chemical, slower, modulating, lingering in the synaptic space like echoes. Together, they create a language that is neither letters nor words, but pulses, patterns, rhythms, and timing. The brain's language is complex, adaptive, capable of infinite nuance. Science maps it with electrodes, imaging, and models, yet each connection, each burst, carries a subtlety that cannot be fully captured. In this silence, there is both clarity and mystery. Consider communication within this network. A thought arises, and thousands of neurons fire in harmony. A memory rekindles, and synapses light up, sending signals outward, echoing through the cortex and hippocampus. Emotions ripple along amygdala pathways, coloring the flow with fear, joy, or surprise. Each message influences another, creating feedback loops, chains, networks within networks. This language is not static. Synapses strengthen with use, weaken with disuse, change with experience. Your brain rewrites its own dictionary continually, shaping how signals travel, how thoughts form, how learning occurs. It is both dynamic and delicate, a living text that writes itself moment by moment. Contrast sharpens the wonder. Some synapses fire hundreds of times per second, precise and urgent, while others whisper slowly, modulating mood and attention. Over hours, some connections are strong and stable, anchoring long-term memory. Others are fleeting, disappearing as quickly as they appeared, supporting ephemeral thoughts. The same neuron can participate in multiple circuits, speaking in different dialects depending on the context. The language of synapses is a symphony of speed, timing, and chemistry, a dialogue that balances chaos and order, randomness and structure. Within this complexity, thought emerges. Within this dance, you become aware. Neurotransmitters are the grammar of this language. Dopamine carries signals of reward, anticipation, and motivation. Serotonin modulates mood, shaping the backdrop of experience. Glutamate excites, strengthening connections, while GABA calms, restraining and refining. Each chemical acts like a word, a tone, a punctuation mark, adding meaning to the raw pulses. When neurotransmitters flow in balance, thought is smooth, perception clear, emotion grounded. When the balance shifts, experiences warp, moods fluctuate, perception tilts. The poetry of synapses lies in this interplay, in how countless signals combine to create consciousness, thought, and self. Think of plasticity, the ability of synapses to change. Every experience, every repetition, every reflection reshapes the network. Learning is written into the architecture of connections. A new skill forms by strengthening pathways, pruning others. A memory is etched by repeated firing, reinforced, modified, integrated into the broader landscape. The brain is a city under constant renovation. Roads widened, bridges rebuilt, new districts added. Plasticity allows growth, adaptation, recovery, and transformation. Your thoughts are not fixed. They are patterns, continually rehearsed and rewritten by the language of synapses. Contrast again reveals depth. Consider how silence shapes communication. Some synapses rest, quiet for years, until a trigger awakens them. Some neurons wait, dormant, only to fire under precise conditions. Even absence carries meaning. The spaces between signals define rhythm and structure, shaping the flow as much as the sparks themselves. The language of synapses is not only in what is said, but in what is left unsaid, in the timing, in the pauses, in the orchestration of fire and rest. Consciousness emerges not from noise alone, but from the music of patterns and pauses combined. This language is also social. Neurons do not work in isolation. Networks fire in synchrony, linking distant regions of the brain. Visual cortex speaks to hippocampus, amygdala dialogues with prefrontal cortex. Layers of circuits talk across scales, From microcircuits of a few neurons to macro networks spanning the entire brain, messages propagate, amplify, feedback, and converge. The result is a coherent mind, capable of thought, reflection, imagination, and feeling. Each synapse participates in a conversation far larger than itself, creating a tapestry of awareness that is astonishing both in its precision and its poetry. Consider thought itself. When you imagine a face, plan an action, or recall a memory, the language of synapses orchestrates complex patterns across space and time. No single neuron holds the idea. No single synapse contains the meaning. Rather, the idea arises from the collective dance, the timing, the strength, the sequence of signals. Thought is emergent, a phenomenon that occurs when many simple processes interact in exquisitely coordinated patterns. The poetry lies in knowing that something as abstract and personal as imagination emerges from the silent conversation of cells. Philosophy lingers at the edges. If your mind arises from patterns of synaptic firing, then who is the you experiencing it? Are you the sum of these dialogues, a conductor for countless messages, or the silent awareness listening to the symphony? Could you ever exist without the conversation? And yet, if the language is chemical, electrical, precise, and structured, how does it feel like anything at all to be alive, to think, to wonder, to dream? The language of synapses carries both the mechanics of thought and the ineffable experience of self. Science maps the pathways, but wonder remains in the listening. Now, imagine the night settling over this inner city. Sparks slow, pulses quiet, patterns linger, and sleep arrives. Even as you rest, synapses continue their subtle dialogue, consolidating, repairing, rehearsing. The city never truly sleeps. Its whispers continue, shaping tomorrow's thoughts, dreams, and decisions. Every moment, the language of synapses writes and rewrites your mind, crafting the seamless flow you call consciousness. And as you drift into stillness, hold softly the reflection. You are both the city and the listener, both the language and the one who understands it, inhabiting a universe of silent, luminous conversation that makes you alive. Close your eyes and imagine time not as a ticking clock, but as a fluid river winding through your mind. Within your brain, seconds stretch, compress, and overlap. Moments fold into one another. The past and future ripple across circuits, influencing the present in ways you rarely notice. Tonight, we drift into the neural realm of time, where perception, memory, and consciousness weave a tapestry that shapes how you experience existence. Time is not only outside you, flowing evenly through the universe, it is sculpted inside, colored by the rhythms of your own mind. Neuroscience reveals that the brain measures time across multiple scales. Specialized neurons in the cerebellum, basal ganglia, and cortex track intervals from milliseconds to hours, guiding movement, speech, and anticipation. Yet these internal clocks are not perfect. They adapt, stretch, and recalibrate according to attention, expectation, and emotion. In moments of fear, time slows. In moments of joy, it quickens. In repetitive routines, it collapses into the familiar. Science can map the circuits, track the firing patterns, and identify chemical modulators of time perception. But these measurements describe only the mechanism, not the felt quality, the lived elastic experience of now that is uniquely yours. Contrast sharpens understanding. Consider how dreams distort time. You may sleep for an hour, yet live entire lifetimes in that span. Memories replay hours of interaction in seconds. The brain simulates sequences, condenses events, and stitches them together into coherent stories, independent of objective measurement. Even in waking life, perception of time is relative. When fully absorbed, moments expand into depthless presence. When distracted or anxious, they fragment, slipping past unnoticed. Your experience of reality is therefore not simply chronological, it is dynamic, subjective, molded by attention, emotion, and neural architecture. Time in the neural realm is a flexible canvas, not a rigid grid. Think of memory's role in constructing time. The hippocampus, a central hub for encoding and recalling events, allows you to navigate not only space, but also temporal sequences. Memories create a sense of continuity, linking one moment to the next, forming the story of your life. Yet memory is fallible, reconstructed each time it is recalled. Past experiences are not preserved like video recordings. They are rebuilt, edited, infused with present perspective. Thus, the flow of time you perceive is partially a narrative you create, a mosaic of recollection and expectation. Neuroscience provides the map. Philosophy ponders the meaning. If time is partly a construction of memory, how real is the river of moments you inhabit? Contrast again illuminates the paradox. Neuroscientists distinguish between objective time, measured by clocks, and celestial motion, and subjective time, the inner experience of now. Even though seconds pass uniformly in the universe, your perception warps them. A single conversation can feel like minutes or hours, a car ride like an eternity or a blink. Your brain does not passively record reality, it interprets it, giving meaning to moments, guiding behavior, and shaping emotion. In this interplay, time becomes a living phenomenon, born from the rhythms of neurons, rather than imposed externally. Consider anticipation. Dopamine circuits in the brain fire not only in response to reward but in preparation for it. These neurons measure intervals, create predictions, and encode the expectation of future events. This internal sense of temporal order allows planning, decision-making, and hope. Without it, you would float aimlessly, untethered to past or future. Yet anticipation is subjective, elastic, colored by desire and fear. The same hour can feel heavy with dread or light with expectation. Time in the neural realm is never neutral. It is always experienced, always felt, always lived. Now, ponder attention. Focus stretches time. Distraction collapses it. When you immerse fully, a single second can feel expansive, rich, almost eternal. When fragmented, hours evaporate unnoticed. Attention is the lens through which the brain sculpts temporal reality. Your neural circuits prioritize, enhance, and filter experiences, defining which moments linger and which vanish. In this way, the architecture of perception directly shapes the architecture of time. You live not in uniform seconds, but in the vivid, subjective river your mind constructs from countless micro-events, pulses, and connections. Philosophy lingers at the edge. If the brain creates the experience of time, then is the universe itself temporal, or only the conscious mind? Are past, present, and future universal, or merely perspectives woven by awareness? Einstein revealed that time is relative, stretching, and contracting across space-time depending on motion and gravity. The brain reveals a parallel truth. Subjective time stretches and contracts within the mind, bending reality into a personal, lived experience. Science measures clocks, philosophy measures wonder. Time is both physical and perceptual, cosmic and intimate, outside you and inside you, ever-flowing, yet endlessly malleable. Contrast again between certainty and mystery. Clocks tick steadily, predictable and precise. Neurons fire with patterns, rhythms, sequences. Yet consciousness overlays these patterns with experience. The feeling of a second passing, the dread of waiting, the joy of fullness, the tension of anticipation. Time in the neural realm is a hybrid, mechanical, chemical, electrical, yet intimately subjective. It is both measurable and ineffable, both mapped and imagined, both counted and lived. You navigate this duality each day, largely unaware, yet profoundly affected, guided by the invisible rhythm of your own brain. Imagine now drifting towards sleep, where time unravels further. In dreams, moments fold, stretch, collapse. The past and future intermingle, emotions tint sequences, and impossible scenarios feel seamless. Sleep reveals that temporal perception is deeply malleable, built from neural rhythms, memory reconstructions, and imagination. Even as you surrender to rest, the brain continues to sculpt time, consolidating memory, rehearsing sequences, predicting tomorrow. Each dream, each ripple, each firing pattern reshapes your sense of continuity. Time is not merely experienced, it is created, moment by moment, by the language and rhythm of neurons. So tonight, as you drift into quiet, let yourself rest within this neural river. Feel the rhythm of your thoughts, the pulses of perception, the unfolding of moments within. Time is both outside you and inside you. It stretches and compresses, flows and folds, dances and rests. You are carried by it, yet you also shape it. Consciousness and memory, attention and anticipation, emotion and perception, all sculpt the river you inhabit. And as you sink deeper into stillness, hold softly this reflection. If time is a creation of the mind, then what moments will you shape tonight? In the boundless, fluid realm within. Close your eyes and listen, not to the sounds of the world, but to the hidden music of your mind. Within your brain, billions of neurons pulse in rhythms, firing in synchrony, creating patterns that orchestrate perception, thought, and feeling. These rhythms are not random. They are the beat, the meter, the melody of consciousness itself. Tonight, we enter this symphony, where electricity and chemistry dance together, where thought becomes music, and where the mind reveals its hidden harmonies. Neuroscientists identify several distinct neural rhythms. Delta waves, slow and deep, dominate during dreamless sleep, supporting restoration and memory consolidation. Theta waves accompany light sleep, drowsiness, and creative insight, allowing glimpses across boundaries of thought. Alpha waves appear in calm wakefulness, a gentle hum of readiness and reflection. Beta waves accelerate in active thinking and problem-solving. Gamma waves, fast and subtle, integrate information across regions, giving rise to perception and awareness. Each rhythm contributes its own texture, its own character, shaping the landscape of consciousness in a delicate interplay of frequency and amplitude. Contrast illuminates their significance. Some rhythms dominate, others whisper in the background. Sleep waves lull you into deep rest. Wakeful waves propel you into activity. Yet rhythms often overlap, creating interference, harmony, and resonance. The brain is like an orchestra where multiple melodies play simultaneously, sometimes clashing, sometimes converging, always dynamic. Your attention, emotion, and cognition arise not from isolated neurons, but from the music of the network, the temporal coordination of pulses that together compose the mind's song. Consider how rhythms influence cognition. Synchrony between distant neurons allows information to travel efficiently, linking perception, memory, and decision-making. Oscillations guide attention, determine readiness, and shape the flow of thought. When rhythms falter, through fatigue, stress, or illness, perception fragments, memory blurs and focus wavers, music, meditation, and even gentle breathing can entrain neural rhythms, calming the mind, synchronizing thought, and enhancing clarity. In this way, rhythm is both structure and subtle guide, shaping the contours of consciousness as invisibly as it flows. Think of emotion as musical timbre, the joy of a remembered moment, the melancholy of nostalgia, the tension of anticipation. Each overlays neural rhythms with subtle modulation. Emotional states influence rhythm, altering frequency and amplitude across the brain. In turn, rhythm shapes experience. Heartbeat, breath, and neural oscillations dance together, creating embodied cognition, a harmony of body and mind. The music, of thought is therefore not only electric but visceral, resonating through cells, blood, and tissue, uniting perception, memory, and feeling in a single symphonic experience. Contrast sharpens perspective. Consider meditation, slowing breathing, focusing attention, quieting thought. Alpha waves rise, gamma waves synchronize across networks. The chaotic chatter of neurons softens into coherent patterns. Time stretches, clarity deepens, and the self feels expansive, yet silent. Compare this to frantic thought, rapid problem solving, or anxiety, where beta waves dominate, rhythms scatter, and coherence fragments. Neural music mirrors mental life. Harmony brings calm, disharmony brings turbulence. Your inner symphony continuously shapes the landscape of perception, mood, and awareness. Now imagine creativity arising from rhythm. Spontaneous insights often occur when theta waves dominate during relaxed or drowsy states. The mind wanders, associations form, ideas emerge. Neural rhythms allow distant regions to communicate efficiently, linking seemingly unrelated concepts into coherent novelty. Art, invention, and imagination are the audible products of these invisible oscillations. Each insight is a note, each idea a phrase, composed in the quiet spaces between spikes of electrical activity. The music of thought is both a means and a metaphor, a language that describes the dance of consciousness itself. Philosophical reflection deepens wonder. If thought emerges from rhythmic patterns, then who is the listener of this symphony? Are you merely the conductor, coordinating pulses across circuits? Or are you the silent awareness in which the music arises? Rhythm bridges mechanism and meaning, biology and philosophy. It reminds us that consciousness is not only computation. It is experience, flow, feeling, and pattern. Neural rhythms are the heartbeat of your mind, shaping not only what you think, but how it feels to be you. Pause and breathe. Imagine the night settling into your inner city of neurons, the rhythms slowing as you sink towards sleep. Delta waves deepen. Gamma whispers fade, theta swirls, and alpha hums softly in the background. The music of thought continues, gentle and unseen, consolidating memory, shaping emotion, and preparing consciousness for tomorrow. Even in stillness, the symphony plays. Each pulse, each oscillation, each rhythm is a note in the ongoing creation of your awareness. And as you drift deeper into night, let the soft reflection remain. If thought is music, then who is the audience listening to this infinite symphony within? Close your eyes and imagine a world smaller than atoms, a realm of uncertainty, probability, and strange paradoxes. Within this invisible domain, particles flicker in and out of existence, entangle across space, and defy classical logic. Now, imagine that the brain, the seat of consciousness, may touch this realm, not in obvious ways, but subtly, like a faint vibration sensed in a deep dream. Tonight, we drift into the quantum mind, exploring the whispers of possibility, the edges where physics meets thought, and where mystery and science entwine in quiet wonder. Quantum theory tells us that reality at the smallest scale is probabilistic. Particles do not have fixed positions or velocities until observed. They exist as a cloud of potential. Superposition allows them to occupy multiple states simultaneously, and entanglement links particles across distance, creating correlations that defy ordinary intuition. Some theorists propose that quantum processes may play a role in neural activity, influencing microtubules within neurons or shaping the timing of molecular events. Though speculative, these ideas open the mind to the possibility that consciousness itself may, in subtle ways, resonate with quantum phenomena, blurring the line between the deterministic and the probabilistic. Contrast sharpens the wonder. Classical neuroscience describes cognition in terms of action potentials, synaptic transmission, and network dynamics. These are well mapped, measurable, and largely predictable. Quantum approaches suggest something more elusive, a level of indeterminacy, where the brain's very microstructure may explore many potential states before collapsing into a single experience. It is the dance between certainty and possibility, the tension between what is known and what may be. If even a fraction of thought emerges from this quantum realm, then consciousness is not only a product of neurons, but a phenomenon intimately linked to the strange, hidden rules of the universe. Consider the philosophical implications. If the mind interacts with quantum processes, then free will may exist not just as illusion, but as a natural feature of probabilistic behavior. Decisions could emerge from a mesh of possibilities rather than strict causation. This does not mean randomness alone, but a rich landscape where choice, creativity, and insight unfold within probabilistic constraints. Consciousness might not only observe the world, but participate in its unfolding at the quantum level, collapsing possibilities into the reality you experience. Science measures neurons. Philosophy imagines the soul entwined with probability, existing at the intersection of order and mystery. Think of perception in this light. When your senses interpret the world, billions of molecular events occur, each influenced by chemistry, physics, and perhaps even quantum uncertainty. Vision, hearing, touch, all may be shaped not only by classical signals, but by subtle probabilities at the nanoscale. These events may amplify, interact, and cascade into the patterns that underlie thought and awareness. Even if quantum effects are small, they may add a nuance to cognition, a glimmer of creativity, intuition, and insight that classical mechanisms alone cannot explain. The brain may be a classical machine dancing on a quantum stage, a mind arising in part from the whispering, probabilities beneath ordinary reality. Contrast again with ordinary experience. To you, perception feels continuous and stable. You see a tree, feel the wind, hear a bird, solid, definite, predictable. Yet beneath this apparent certainty lies a substrate of potential, of fluctuation, of microscopic ambiguity. What feels stable may arise from billions of tiny choices at the molecular level, each collapsing into a definite pattern only as experience unfolds. The quantum mind suggests that even certainty may contain subtle seeds of possibility, that stability may be layered over uncertainty, and that consciousness may emerge from a landscape far stranger than we can directly perceive. Now imagine thought itself as a quantum dance. Ideas, associations, and insights may emerge as neural networks explore multiple configurations, testing combinations until one pattern resonates into awareness. Creativity may involve a similar collapse of possibilities. The mind sifts through potential arrangements until one crystallizes as an aha moment. If this occurs in part at the quantum scale, then intuition and insight gain a new dimension, not just computation, but resonance, potentiality, and collapse into experience. The quantum mind, if present, would be the whispering frontier of thought, the space where imagination and uncertainty meet. Philosophy deepens the reflection. If consciousness touches the quantum realm, then the mind is not merely a product of matter, it participates in the unfolding of the universe itself. Observation in quantum physics collapses possibilities into reality. Perhaps the mind, in perceiving and deciding, participates similarly. This is not metaphysics alone. It is the poetic merging of mind and cosmos. Your awareness may be more than the sum of neurons. It may be an interface with the fundamental possibilities of the universe, a bridge between what is known and what might be. Consider contrast again. Classical and quantum approaches coexist. Neurons fire, synapses transmit, rhythms pulse, patterns emerge, yet beneath these, a subtle uncertainty lingers, invisible but not irrelevant. The mind navigates this duality effortlessly. Order and chaos, determinacy and possibility, logic and intuition. Consciousness may be classical in most respects, yet quantum in subtle ways, balancing reliability with flexibility, prediction with imagination, stability with wonder. The quantum mind is a reminder that even in the intimate architecture of your brain, the universe remains mysterious, strange, and awe-inspiring. Now, as you drift deeper into night, Imagine your awareness as a bridge spanning scales, from the firing of neurons to the hidden dance of molecules, from deterministic circuits to probabilistic landscapes. Every thought, every sensation, every decision emerges from layers of rhythm, chemistry, and possibility. And within this, the quantum mind whispers. The universe itself participates in the shaping of your experience. As sleep draws you closer to stillness, hold softly this reflection. If consciousness dances on the edge of possibility, then every thought, every choice, every dream is both a product of the brain and a brushstroke in the unfolding canvas of reality itself. Close your eyes and imagine a world built entirely from possibility, a place where the laws of reality bend, time stretches and folds, and your own imagination takes the lead. This is the realm of dreams, the private universe your brain constructs each night. Within this hidden landscape, neurons fire in elaborate patterns, memories intermingle, emotions color perception, and narratives unfold without conscious planning. Tonight, we step into the dreaming brain, exploring how the mind creates worlds, rehearses life, and touches both the familiar and the fantastical, all while you drift gently toward rest. Neuroscience shows that dreaming emerges during specific phases of sleep, particularly REM, rapid eye movement, where brain activity approaches waking levels, yet the body remains still. Networks in the cortex, limbic system, and brainstem coordinate in subtle, intricate ways. The hippocampus replays memory fragments, blending past experiences with imagined scenarios. The prefrontal cortex, less active than in waking life, allows for the fluidity and often illogical narrative of dreams. Dopamine and acetylcholine flow through circuits, adding emotion and modulation, weaving together a sensory-rich tapestry. Dreams are not random, they are structured chaos, a theatre of neural creativity where imagination meets memory and emotion. Contrast sharpens the wonder. Waking life feels linear, logical, bound by physical laws and social conventions. Dreams, in contrast, bend these rules. A single moment can stretch for hours. A familiar street can transform into a labyrinth. People merge or dissolve. Time loops. Impossible events feel plausible. Yet even in this apparent disorder, the brain follows hidden structures, rhythms, patterns, associations. Neural networks coordinate in ways that mimic problem-solving, rehearsal, and emotional processing. Science maps the patterns. Philosophy feels the poetry. The dreaming brain is at once orderly and chaotic, real and imagined, a bridge between the known and the unknowable. Consider memory's role. Dreams often recombine fragments of past experience, faces, voices, places, into novel arrangements. You may meet someone from childhood in a setting that never existed, or relive a distant event through altered circumstances. This recombination is not arbitrary. Neuroscientists suggest dreams help consolidate memory, integrate learning, and explore emotional resolution. The hippocampus rehearses sequences, linking what you have experienced with what you may anticipate. In dreams, the brain practices adaptation, simulates challenges, and replays possibilities, creating a neural rehearsal space that is both practical and poetic. Contrast again, conscious and unconscious, waking and sleeping. While awake, your prefrontal cortex filters, judges, and interprets. In dreams, this filter relaxes, allowing the unconscious mind to surface. Repressed desires, unresolved fears, and creative impulses appear in symbols and narratives. Emotions often dominate over logic, and metaphor governs over literal representation. Dreams reveal not only what you remember, but how your mind organizes, meaning, highlighting connections invisible in waking thought. They are a window into the brain's interpretive machinery, revealing the artistry inherent in neural processes. Think of perception within dreams. Though external sensory input is minimal, the brain generates immersive experiences. Sights, sounds, textures, even tastes Visual cortices fire as though watching real events. Auditory areas reconstruct speech and music. Somatosensory circuits simulate touch and motion. Dreams are thus not merely illusions, but internally generated realities. They feel real because the neural signals mimic those of waking experience, yet they remain untethered from external verification. This reveals a subtle truth. Perception itself is a construction, and dreams are a pure form of that construction, stripped of constraints, yet orchestrated by the same neural rhythms that guide conscious life. Emotion in dreams is heightened. Fear, awe, joy, and wonder arise with intensity, often greater than in waking experience. The amygdala, central to emotional processing, is particularly active during REM, amplifying feelings. This explains why nightmares can terrify, why dreams can exhilarate, why we wake with lingering affective impressions. Emotional intensity makes dreams meaningful. They are not only neural rehearsals, but reflections of inner life, highlighting what matters to the self. Contrast between calm and chaos, safety and threat, joy and sorrow teaches the brain, preparing both body and mind for challenges in waking life. Philosophy whispers here as well. If dreams feel real while occurring, yet dissolve upon waking, what does this tell us about consciousness itself? Are we ever truly anchored in reality? Or does our experience always arise from internally generated signals, interpreted and stitched into a coherent narrative? Dreams remind you that the mind constructs, interprets, and imagines continuously, blurring boundaries between reality and creation. You are the dreamer, the dream, and the observer, inhabiting a universe built by the patterns and rhythms of your own neurons. Contrast again with lucidity. In lucid dreams, awareness within the dream allows partial control over narrative, environment, and action. Here, consciousness touches its own construction, navigating a world of infinite possibility. Neural circuits for self-monitoring and attention partially awaken, enabling reflection and intervention. Lucid dreaming offers a glimpse of the mind observing itself, a feedback loop between perception, cognition, and imagination. It is a bridge between inner worlds and the waking self, showing that even within the fluidity of dreams, awareness can emerge, creating a unique harmony of control and surrender. Now imagine drifting deeper. Your eyes beneath eyelids move rapidly, neurons fire, sequences unfold in vivid, surreal landscapes. Emotions, memory, and imagination intertwine. Even as consciousness softens, dreams consolidate, rehearse, and inspire. They are rehearsal, reflection, and artistry combined. You are simultaneously participant and audience, creator and observer, navigating a universe crafted entirely from neural activity. And as you sink further into quiet night, hold softly this reflection. If your waking mind is constructed, and your dreaming mind more so, then the boundaries between reality and imagination are not walls, but permeable thresholds, inviting exploration, insight, and wonder. Close your eyes and turn inward. Feel the boundary of your awareness, the fragile line where you ends and the world begins. Your sense of self, your body, mind, memories, and thoughts feels solid, immediate, unquestionable. And yet, neuroscience, philosophy, and meditation reveal it to be a shifting, emergent phenomenon. Tonight, we explore the edge of self, where identity, consciousness, and perception meet, where certainty dissolves, and where the mind glimpses both its limits and its vast potential. Neuroscience shows that selfhood arises from networks of neurons distributed across the brain. The prefrontal cortex monitors actions, decisions, and intentions. The parietal cortex maps the body in space. The insula monitors internal states, and the default mode network connects memory, reflection, and imagination. These regions collaborate, integrating sensory input, internal signals, and past experiences to produce a continuous sense of I. Yet the self is not a singular entity. It is an emergent property, a construction that feels unified only because these networks operate in synchrony. Consciousness is the glow at the intersection of countless processes, fleeting and fragile. Contrast sharpens understanding. Consider body illusions. In the rubber hand experiment, seeing a fake hand stroked synchronously with your own hand can create the illusion of ownership. Out-of-body experiences, either spontaneous or induced, shift the perceived location of self beyond the physical body. Virtual reality can extend or alter body representation. These phenomena reveal that the sense of self is malleable, sculpted by perception, expectation, and neural integration. The you feel is real in experience, yet flexible in architecture, hinting that identity is a dynamic dance rather than a fixed essence. Memory shapes self-perception. You recall past actions, anticipate future ones, and narrate these in the present, weaving a coherent story of identity. Yet memory is reconstructive, not literal. Each recollection is modified by emotion, context, and expectation. The self is a narrative crafted moment by moment, blending fact and interpretation, sensation and imagination. Neuroscience maps the circuits, and philosophy reflects on meaning. If identity depends on fluid memory, then the line between who you are and who you remember being is thin, ever-shifting, and profoundly intimate. Contrast arises in attention. When fully absorbed in an experience, flow, meditation, or deep focus, the sense of self can diminish, dissolve, or expand. Some meditators report the fading of personal boundaries, a sense of unity with the environment, or the merging of inner and outer worlds. In extreme states, the self becomes a temporary phenomenon, observed rather than inhabited. Neuroscience shows decreased activity in self-monitoring networks during these states, suggesting that the feeling of I is a process, not a static object. This edge of self is both unsettling and liberating, revealing identity as permeable. And transient emotion also defines boundaries. Fear, joy, empathy, and awe influence perception of self. Strong emotions can expand or contract the sense of presence, alter embodiment, or shift perspective. Mirror neurons allow you to experience others' actions and feelings as if they were your own, blending internal and external awareness. The edge of self is thus social, relational, and dynamic, constantly negotiating between individuality and connection, isolation and unity, perception and projection. It is at once intimate and universal, personal and shared. Philosophy lingers. If the self is constructed, fluid, and relational, what is its essence? Are you merely the sum of neural activity, the narrative of memory, or the awareness observing these processes? Buddhism, phenomenology, and modern cognitive science converge in suggesting that the self is a process, not a thing. It is a river of experience, a constellation of processes, a shimmering intersection of perception, attention, and memory. To observe the self is to glimpse both the foundation and the illusion, the stability and the impermanence that define conscious life. Contrast again with ordinary certainty. Waking life feels anchored by a continuous, persistent self. Yet the edge of self, through meditation, virtual manipulation, neurological experiments, or dreams, shows that this solidity is a convenient illusion crafted for navigation, survival, and meaning. Identity is simultaneously robust and fragile, cohesive and mutable, concrete in narrative yet flexible in process. The brain produces coherence, but coherence does not imply permanence. Your sense of being is a delicate balance between structure and impermanence, continuity and flux. Consider introspection as a bridge to understanding. When you pause, reflect, or meditate, you observe the processes that generate selfhood. Thoughts arise and fade, sensations appear and dissolve, memories emerge and transform. In this quiet observation, you glimpse the edge, the subtle boundary between observer and observed, between mind and world, between identity and phenomenon. Selfhood becomes less of a possession and more of a participation, a flow in which awareness itself dances at the boundary of perception, thought, and memory. Now imagine drifting towards sleep. Boundaries soften, narratives relax, and the sense of a solid self fades into the rhythms of neural activity. The body rests, consciousness shifts, and identity merges with the quiet flow of thought and perception. Even as you surrender, the brain continues its work, integrating, consolidating, rehearsing, and shaping the next experience of you. And as you sink deeper into night, hold gently this reflection. If selfhood is a delicate construct, ever shifting at the edge, then the mystery of who you are is not a problem to solve, but a landscape to explore, endlessly, with curiosity and compassion. Close your eyes and take a slow breath. Let the quiet of the night settle around you, and imagine the vast expanse of thought stretching beyond the limits of certainty. There are questions that science answers, mysteries that philosophy probes, and wonders that neither fully capture. Tonight, we drift into the space beyond knowing, where curiosity itself becomes a companion, and the mind learns to rest in awe, wonder, and quiet reflection. This is the final chapter of our journey, yet it is also the threshold of endless exploration, where the mysteries of neurons, consciousness, and the universe invite gentle contemplation. Science gives us maps of the mind, neurons, synapses, rhythms, and networks. We have traced thought from sparks in silence to the music of rhythms, explored time as constructed within neural circuits, wandered through dreams, touched the quantum fringes of possibility, and stood at the edge of self. Each chapter has revealed clarity and insight, yet each also reveals the limitations of certainty. Knowledge illuminates the landscape, but vast regions remain shrouded in shadows. Beyond knowing is not emptiness. It is the recognition that there is always more to discover, that understanding itself is a journey rather than a destination, and that the mind thrives not only on answers, but on questions. Contrast sharpens perspective. Some truths are measurable, observable, repeatable. Neurons fire, synapses transmit, brain rhythms oscillate. Other truths are subjective, ephemeral, poetic. The feeling of consciousness, the flow of time, the experience of self. Beyond knowing lies the tension between these realms, the precise and the elusive, the tangible and the ineffable. This tension is not discomfort, it is awe. It is the recognition that the universe, the mind and life itself are richer, deeper, and stranger than any single perspective can capture. The mind rests here in humility, curiosity, and wonder, embracing the mystery rather than fearing it. Consider the role of imagination. Beyond knowing, the mind wanders freely, combining memory, observation, and intuition to explore what is possible, not just what is proven. Creativity, dreams, and philosophical reflection all flourish in this space. Here, neurons still fire, rhythms pulse, synapses communicate, but the purpose shifts from certainty to exploration. Questions are no longer problems to solve. They are paths to wander, windows to gaze through, and stars to navigate by. In this gentle wandering, you discover that the mind's true capacity lies not only in grasping facts, but in sustaining wonder, cultivating curiosity, and resting in the beauty of the unknown. Contrast deepens with certainty. In waking life, we often cling to knowledge, to definitions, to the solidity of what we know. Beyond knowing, however, there is liberation, the ability to let go of rigid structures, to float in possibility, to explore ideas without the weight of proof. This is the space where philosophy, art, and meditation meet science, a shared recognition that consciousness is both capable and limited, capable of understanding, yet constantly confronted by its own horizon. In this liminal space, you are invited to witness your own mind, to appreciate its creativity, and to feel the profound peace that arises when certainty relaxes. Think of memory and time here. Beyond knowing, The past is not fixed, it is reconstructed. The future is not predetermined, it is imagined. Consciousness, perception, and attention shape each moment as it unfolds. In this recognition, time becomes fluid, memory becomes poetic, and the self becomes a dynamic process rather than a rigid identity. The brain continues its work, consolidating, rehearsing, predicting, dreaming. But you, the observer, may rest lightly, appreciating the symphony of processes without needing to control or fully comprehend them. Beyond knowing, awareness expands into presence, into curiosity, into quiet delight. Emotion plays a subtle role. Wonder, awe, gratitude, and humility become companions when certainty is set aside. Fear and anxiety often arise from the need to know, to control, to predict. Letting go gently, you allow the mind to rest in mystery. Emotions enrich perception without dominating it. They color exploration without defining it. Beyond knowing, the mind is both tender and alert, open to experience, reflective yet undemanding. This is the space of quiet joy, where curiosity itself becomes a meditation, and the questions themselves are as meaningful as the answers. Philosophy whispers at the edges. If the self, consciousness, and perception are constructed, emergent, and fluid, then the ultimate landscape of experience lies beyond the borders of certainty. The universe is vast, neurons are numerous, and consciousness remains mysterious. Yet this is not a reason for despair. It is a comfort. It is an invitation to inhabit the space where knowledge, curiosity, and wonder intersect. Beyond knowing, you are not lost. You are awake to the infinite, resting in the gentle acknowledgement that it is okay not to know everything. Curiosity itself becomes a source of peace, a quiet companion in the night. Contrast returns with reflection. The beginning of our journey, when we trace the first spark inside silence, feels near and distant at once. We have traveled through rhythms, dreams, time, and quantum possibility, exploring the neural city and standing at the edge of self. Yet all of these explorations converge in one gentle truth: there will always be more. Knowledge is infinite, mysteries are abundant, and consciousness continues its delicate unfolding. The journey is the gift, the questions are the companions, and the mind, with all its neurons and synapses, continues to sing the quiet song of awareness. Now, as you drift toward the deepest quiet, return softly to where we began. The welcome of this shared nighttime journey, the whispered invitation to notice where you are listening from, the gentle gratitude for presence and attention. Thank you for traveling through the sparks, rhythms, and edges of your mind, for wandering through neurons and consciousness, for resting in both understanding and mystery. And as you let yourself sink into sleep, hold gently this comforting thought: it is okay not to know everything, for curiosity itself is a form of peace, a gentle light that guides you through the infinite night. Take a slow breath, let the mind soften, and if you wish, like, subscribe, and join again for the next shared journey, here, where science meets wonder, and where the mind drifts calmly through the mysteries of being. Beyond knowing, you are both participant and observer, both question and answer, both awake and dreaming, resting in the infinite possibility of what may be.